Matthew, we joke about, so growing up, Matthew was 5 years younger. So my brother Mark and Cammie and I, we were clustered. And then 5 years later, Matthew was born. So he was definitely a caboose. He was a trailer. And all of us, from the time we were probably late grade school, junior high, so this would be Mark and Cammie and I, we watched Days of Our Lives. We talk about Days of Our Lives, have scenes in the hospital, and it's wealthy people at cocktail parties and all of this. And then Matthew ends up finding a niche in the world where he was in an aspect of healthcare that is so important, and he's dealing with people that have a lot of resources, and he spends his time planning events and just being with people. And so we used to tease Matthew that he found a way to live Days of Our Lives, every day. So from the time Matthew was young, he did have anxiety. And then as an adult, with Matthew being gay, I also remember Matthew and I were very close. And I remember when he came out, which I think it's sad that even has to be a thing. He told me, and I remember just like falling back. I was sitting on the floor, he was sitting in a chair, and I remember just kind of falling back onto the floor and thinking, oh, thank goodness. I thought that was what it was. I was afraid it was something bad. And I said, Matthew, no, it's fine. He said, oh, I feel like I'm ruining our all-American family. And I said, no, you're making us the all-American family. I mean, now we're a well-balanced all-American family. So Matthew at least never talked about any openly hurtful things that he had to battle with or anything like that during most of his young adulthood and adulthood. He was, however, lonely. Matthew struggled. I think he always wanted to get married and have kids. I think Matthew longed to have a family. And I think that was hugely one of the things that was a trigger for him and a challenge for him in his adult life. It kind of fed into the drug addiction and continued mental health struggles that he had, was just loneliness. Wow, I think he would have wanted his legacy to be a family and children, really. I think he would have wanted his legacy to be children and grandchildren. I think that's what he would have wanted. And at the point in his life when he died, that still probably wasn't an impossibility. He was 47. I mean, he still had a lot of life left to live. So I think Matthew's truest, most authentic desire for a legacy would have been to pass his values and his culture, his beliefs, his enthusiasm, his love on to generations directly. But not having kids, his projects kind of became his kids. Allen Hospital, the foundation of Allen Hospital. He put loving energy into that kind of stuff that he did. And all the other boards and things that he did. Matthew had the ability to put an extraordinary amount of energy and love into projects that he did. And I think that our community kind of benefited from that. People trusted Matthew. So when he would bring to them opportunities for contributions or donations or planning, they trusted Matthew. So the same thing was important when he was going to decide where he wanted to leave his money. And there are so many wonderful ways in our community that you can have an impact, both with your current giving or with legacy planning, all honorable, wonderful ways. Matthew was tied to the foundation. I think he had just intimate knowledge about how the foundation is run, what the goals of the foundation are, and all of the lives that are impacted by the money that the foundation funnels. And so I don't think that there was ever a question where his legacy planning money was going to go. It was going to go to the foundation. As a matter of fact, when we have been talking with the Community Foundation, we absolutely want, whenever possible, the funding that comes that's building from what Matthew started and then what was left through his estate and then anything else that might trickle in because of it. We absolutely would favor it to be utilized to support people in that are that are touching the lives of people that have struggles with mental health or especially with addiction. And if we have the ability to impact a channel of part of that money, a little chunk of that money towards something that would help someone like Matthew, we're going to do it. So Matthew wouldn't have chosen his legacy to be a message of warning and a pathway for discussion about the horrors of methamphetamine. He wouldn't have chosen that. It would have been much better if he could have been a success story of getting clean after being addicted to methamphetamine. I think that would have been, were he alive now, he would have chosen that to be a legacy, certainly. So opening communication lines about it absolutely is another thing that Matthew wouldn't have wanted as a legacy, but I think would please him, that that's part of his legacy, is that people are talking. People are starting to feel comfortable talking.